Every author who acquires a name has what you might call a signature novel. I think Professor Berman would agree that Ernest Hemingway's signature novel is The Sun Also Rises. And Fitzgerald's is almost without doubt The Great Gatsby. And mine, of course, has been kind enough to mention is The Caine Mutiny. And that, too, bears on this theme that I'm delivering here of the strange, the strange fact that I really am not, or haven't been until recently, known as a Jewish writer. Caine Mutiny was published almost day and date with a really powerful, wonderful Army story called From Here to Eternity by James Jones. I'm sure many read it. A great movie was made of it. So it was a while catching on. But then it became, I can say so now after 50 years, a most tremendous bestseller. I mean, it's a once-in-a-lifetime sort of thing. And there, my wife and I were in the chips. So we took a transatlantic voyage, first class, Queen Mary. Doesn't exist any day. Luxury like that doesn't exist. And as I was walking along the deck, first class, I had the once-in-a-lifetime experience of seeing one person after another sitting in these deck chairs reading a Caine Mutiny. And there was one gentleman whom I recognized who was not reading the Caine Mutiny. In fact, he wasn't reading, he was sitting looking out to sea. I recognized him immediately. A wonderful, craggy face and a shock of iron gray hair. It was Sholem Asch, the great Yiddish novelist. Controversial because of his Christological trilogy, but, you know, an unmistakably great, one of the great authors of the day. Well, on impulse, I went up to him, and speaking Yiddish, which of course I could, I congratulated him on his work, and he accepted the compliment with gracious condescension. And then I mentioned that I just published a book called The Caine Mutiny. He stared at me. His eyes opened wide, almost popped out, and he said, "You're the author of The Caine Mutiny? I thought you must be a big blonde goy." And that evening we invited him to dinner, and he came to the very discreetly marked kosher section of Queen Mary. It was wonderful. It was just in among the others, but the silverware and the dishes were very discreetly marked with a Magen David. We were sitting at the table. The maitre d' led Sholem Asch to our table. He came to the table. He picked up the cutlery. He looked at a plate. And he said, "The author of the Caine Mutiny eats kosher, and Sholem Asch doesn't." But there you have it, you see. I don't know that most of the people who read the Caine Mutiny thought of me as a big blonde goy. But what the image that the debut of Aurora Dawn had created, the Caine Mutiny really fixed. I became known as a writer of large-scale war drama. In fact, when the Caine Mutiny was published, it said The Caine Mutiny, Herman Wouk, author of Aurora Dawn. And that fixed, I think, the image of Herman Wouk that lasted for years. Almost to the present day, really. And it's really strange because after the Caine Mutiny, I published Marjorie Morningstar, a wholly Jewish book, and also a very successful one I'm proud of. I wish I could read to you today, but time won't allow for it. And then, as many of you may know, I published a book called This Is My God, a nonfiction, a depiction of the Judaism I had learned and loved. But that didn't change it. And it's strange because I would think that Sholem Asch would have recognized in the Caine Mutiny, the key role played by a Jew, because Barney Greenwald, the Jewish lawyer who saves the executive officer and gets him acquitted at the court-martial, I hope that a lot of you have seen or remember the story. There's this Captain Queeg, who was a mad captain, or nearly mad one, who was relieved at the height of a typhoon by his executive officer. There's a court-martial, and this Jewish lawyer brilliantly turns around the trial so that it becomes a trial of Captain Queeg. The executive officer has relieved the captain at the instigation of the executive officer, a clever intellectual named Tom Kiefer. That's all you have to know, except this, to set the scene. This is the very last scene in the Caine Mutiny court-martial, and it's one of the last scenes in the book. Marek, the executive officer, has been acquitted. The novelist, Tom Kiefer, this clever intellectual who's been writing a novel out at sea, has just received an advance of $1,000 on his novel, and he's thrown a banquet to celebrate the acquittal of Marek and his getting an advance on his novel. And they invite Barney Greenwald to the banquet, and he arrives. And this is a speech that he delivers. $1,000 advance on a novel. Guess I ought to return the celebrated author's toast at that. A little speech. I'm very drunk, and I'm kind of warped. But it suddenly seems to me that if I wrote a war novel, I'd try to make a hero out of your captain, Old Yellowstain. And they all started laughing. No, I'm serious. I would. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you how I'm warped. I'm a Jew. I guess you all know that. I'd make Old Yellowstain a hero on account of my mother, a little gray-haired Jewish lady, fat. Well, sure, you guys all have mothers, but they don't have to be the same shape mine would have been if we lost this war. You see, the Germans aren't kidding about the Jews. They're cooking us down a soap over there. And somehow I can't cotton to the idea my mom melted down to a bar of soap. And you see, Mr. Kiefer, while I was studying law and you were working on your novel, and little Willie here was on a playing fields at Princeton, well, that time these birds we call regulars, these stuffy, stupid Prussians, they were standing guard on this fat, dumb, happy country of ours. Of course, they were doing it for dough, the way everybody does what they do. Question is, in the last analysis, what do you do for dough? You and me for dough, we're advancing our free little non-Prussian lives. So when all hell broke loose and the Germans started running down a soap and figured, well, time to come over and melt down old Mrs. Greenwald. Who's going to stop them? Not our boy Barney. Can't stop the Nazis with a law book. So I dropped the law books and enlisted in the Navy to learn how to fly. Stout fella. Meantime, and it took 1.5 years before I was any good, was keeping Mama out of the soap dish. Tom Kiefer, Communication School. Willie Keith, Midshipman School. Old Yellowstain, maybe? Why, yes, even poor, sad Queeg. And most of them not sad at all, fellas. A lot of them sharper boys than any of us. Don't kid yourself. Can't be good in the Army and Navy unless you're damn good. Now, Steve, this dinner is a phony. You're guilty. Of course, you're only half guilty as another guy who stayed very neatly out of the picture. The guy who started the whole idea that Queeg was a dangerous paranoiac, who argued into it for half a year, who invented the name Old Yellowstain, kept feeding you those psychiatry books, pointed out Article 186, kept hammering it at you. He turns on Kiefer. If there's a guilty party at this table, it's you. If you hadn't filled Steve Marek's thick head with full of paranoia and Article 184, why, you'd have got Queeg to come north, or you'd have helped the poor bastard pull through the South. And the Caine wouldn't have been yanked out of action in the hottest part of the war. I'm all finished, Mr. Kiefer. I'm up to the toast. Here's to you. You bowled a perfect score. You went after Queeg, and you got him. You kept your own skirts all white and starchy. You'll publish your novel proving the Navy stinks, and you'll make $1 million, and you'll marry Hedy Lamarr, so you won't mind a little verbal reprimand from me. What does it mean? I defended Steve because I found out the wrong guy was on trial. Only way I could defend him was to murder Queeg for you. I'm sure that I was pushed into that spot. I'm ashamed of what I did, and that's why I'm drunk. Queeg deserved better at my hands. I owed him a favor, don't you see? He stopped Hermann Goering from washing his fat behind with my mother. So I'm not going to eat your dinner, Mr. Kiefer, or drink your wine, but simply make my toast and go. Here's to you, Mr. Caine's favorite author, and here's to your book. And he throws the wine in Kiefer's face. You can wipe for the rest of your life, mister. You'll never wipe off that yellow stain. He gives Marek a friendly punch on the shoulder. See you in Tokyo, you mutineer. He staggers out. Curtain.